Hey, what's up guys? So today, in line with what we did before, because we got good feedback about it, to show some graphics design considerations for photographers, because every now and then a photographer needs to do some graphics designer type of work for various reasons. Honestly, it's usually for some kind of online promo. Some people do it for their watermark, which this would be relevant today, or who knows why, but we're going to show you some graphic design considerations. Now, for those who don't know, I've been a graphic designer since the early 90s. Photoshop and I go way back, etc., etc. So I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. I actually have a lot of experience with graphic design. So a couple of things I'll mention today. The idea here is to take this screenshot of Boris FX Optics logo, which I needed to do, and modify it because I'm making some various promos, because Boris FX Optics is kind of co-sponsoring a workshop I'm doing in Las Vegas in March of 2025 with Dennis Dunbar. We're doing a commercial retouching workshop off-site at WPPI. If you're watching this way after that, well, then it's over. But if for some reason you want to come out, we'd love to see you. But I'm taking this screenshot, the Boris FX Optics logo, and I want to make it like this. And when basically that means that it's going to be monochromatic, which in this case, white, right? But I still preserve some of the graphical elements, like the yellow on the top of the cube becomes like this gray. I could also invert it, etc., etc. The idea is that I can do this with it, right? You see the graphics behind it. You see the collage. That allows me to keep its transparency and make sure that it's perfectly seamless. Now, it does seem, maybe if you're not a seasoned graphic designer, this might seem obvious. I mean, we just do any kind of tool, right? Either a magic wand or some other selection tool, or selecting, maybe using some, color range or something like that. Well, what I'm here to show you is that selections are a bad idea. We're not doing selections, okay? We need to use the luminosity of what we're looking at to create this sort of extraction, as it were. And a couple of things. One, if this was a formal commercial job and I was handed this screenshot, the first thing I would tell the client, if for some reason it was Boris FX, I'd be like, do you have a master file? Do you have a vector file? Do you have an Illustrator file? Do you have an EPS file? Do you have anything that's going to be vector-based, ideally, or some kind of already transparent version of the logo? Now, a lot of times during my career as a graphic designer, especially in web design, I would be handed or sent, the lowest grade of quality version. Oh, this is what we got. This is all we got. Can you make it work? Okay. And so this is just what graphic designers might do. And this could benefit you. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go ahead and show you. This is our nice transparent result. Let's talk about how I would do this. Okay. I'm going to try to leave both of these open as I can, just to kind of show you the whole process. So we need to take the luminosity of what we're looking at. And if I know that the end result is going to be this, basically a monochrome thing, when I say that is that I can invert this and make it black. I can do all kinds of things to do different colors. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay. But we want to work with the raster data, the pixels that are there, without doing selections, which are going to ruin our edges, our anti-alias edges, which is the beautiful sort of simulation of graphics. Now you see here, if you look carefully, you'll see this has all kinds of compression. This is obviously made into a JPEG, which has lossy compression. I took a screenshot of it. I took a screenshot of it and made it a PNG just because of the nature of how it takes a screenshot. It is not an ideal vector logo, an ideal line art logo in terms of the file, sort of quality. But I needed it small. I needed it fast. I needed it now. And it's also a very casual thing. It's not a formal client, so I'm not going to sit there and demand vector files. So with that said, what do? Here is my usual process. I'll keep the original in the background for various reasons. But again, we're not making a selection of anything we're looking at. I'll duplicate the logo immediately, and then I'll take all the color out. Now you can do that with a hue and saturation layer. You can hit Command U and take the saturation down, but you can just hit Shift Command or Shift Control U, and now it's desaturated. Okay. Now I need to maximize its black and whiteness. Okay. Real quick way. Command or Control L. Okay, especially when the logo in question, you need it to be, basically you want to keep it transparency, or at least have some element of that. And you don't know exactly what you want to do with it, but you know it's going to be a solid color. I like to maximize what's black and what's white, because anything that's going to be gray with this method will end up transparent. So what's going to be black and what's going to be white? So with Command and Control L triggered, this is the levels, but a permanent levels. It's not an adjustment layer. You could absolutely do it with an adjustment layer, but I'm pretty committed to this. So here we go. We have our little eyedroppers over here. So I'm going to take the dark eyedropper and I'm going to choose, what do I want to be black? If I choose the outline of this hexagon, not much is going to change. See that? Because now this middle gray, this middle cube has the two levels of gray. Well, I kind of want it to be solid. I don't necessarily want it to have transparency everywhere. So I click that as my black point. See that? Now the white point, if I were to click the white point on the light gray of the top of the cube, now I've made that completely gone. It's vanished, right? So we don't want that. So I want the white point to be pure white. Now, often these graphics that you receive or you screenshot or you steal off a website or something will have pure black and white. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have a ton of compression noise. Usually if it saves as JPEG line art, there'll be a ton of compression noise. If it's really, really bad, there could be some manual cleanup. This one's not too bad. So we're going to roll with it. Okay. So just going to confirm we have black here, use our white there. Now we have the basis of what's going to be our mask. But what do we need to do? I want to select the luminosity of it. So I Command or Control I. Now there it is. You can see where we're going. But here we have on the layer, we have it permanently white pixels on black with a little bit of the gray. If we use some kind of selection tool, whether you use a magic wand tool or do some kind of manual selection, which could work if you're really, really accurate. But this is such a geometric thing, a perfect hexagon and all that. I would not want to do this manually. Okay, that would have to be last resort. I want to make sure that I can just select the luminosity. Now we do this in other videos for photo reasons, but it still works today. In other words, we go to our channels, we hold down Command or Control, and we can click the RGB channel, and now we have the luminosity selected. See how easy that is? Keep in mind too, of course, that Option Command or Option Control or Alt Control, Alt Control 2 also does it. Now I have the luminosity selected. At this point, I'll usually turn off all the layers. There it is, perfectly selected without worrying about ruining anti-aliasing, because the luminosity selection, by selecting the RGB channel in this manner, allows me to have all those beautiful nuances of the anti-aliasing in place. So now I can make a new layer. There it is. Choose white as my foreground layer, foreground color. In this case, it's just going to be white. Okay. And now I'm going to fill this selection. There's all kinds of different ways to fill it, but I'm going to go ahead and do Option Delete or Alt Delete. I can talk this morning. Option Delete or Alt Delete. And now it's filled with white. Okay. By choosing, or rather selecting, the luminance of what I was looking at, which was this, all my variables and all my, like I said, anti-aliasing and everything is preserved. Now, this little graphic down here, little corner of the graphic from the screenshot, that's obviously here now. So we can just delete that. It's pretty easy to delete. We can take our marquee tool, kind of capture around it, and just simply hit delete, Command or Control D, and there it is. So now, if I were to turn that off on this file, if I took this extracted file and dragged it over, there it is. See that? Now we have some trace area up there, which I have to fix. That's not a hard fix at all. We can use the eraser tool. A lot of times when I'm doing graphic stuff and I use the eraser tool, I'll have it on block mode because I am just literally going for the pixels. Okay, move it over. Oops, move it over. Click there, click there, click there, click there. Again, in a perfect world, you would be provided with a logo file that makes sense. That might be vector or something like that. So there it is. You see how we have transparency on the top, which may or may not be interesting. I don't know. All right, but I can change this and I can shrink it. As you can see, no matter where I were to put it, this is not exactly where I'd put it on the file, but as you can see, it looks very, very intentional. And it's still, to me, what I did was I chose that on the file. I wanted it to have some semblance of difference. I could also extract that exact area of the top of the cube and choose a different gray that's solid, but I thought the transparency could look kind of cool, and it's the easiest way with the luminance, right? No problem at all. Now, another thing too, we don't want to fill these pixels, this raster information, necessarily fill it to change its color, right? There's white. How do we change the color? Hue adjustments won't work. Saturation won't work because it's pure white. Well, obviously Command I is an invert for black, but we can choose solid color adjustment layer, choose any color we want, hold down Alt or Option between the solid color and the logo, hold down Alt or Option and click when the little arrow shows up, clip it down. There we go. And now we have applied red, and we can change that color any way we want. Okay. And that applies for anything. That also accounts for or applies for all kinds of different tools that might work. But once you have the color there, then everything you do on top of it will matter. Now, we're not going to make this into a full-blown graphic design thing on what could possibly help this look, or how do we make it stick out more? How do we add some depth to it? We're not going to do that right now. It's not a graphics channel, but I wanted to show you what it was like to quickly do that. Now, let's say you want to do a 2-color thing, which is why I have this crappy YouTube logo here. It's very low res. We can get better ones. It's very compressed, but I want to show you what's possible if you want to preserve the color, but do a completely seamless extraction. Here again, if you did a magic wand, you could come in here and do it and it looks like it's working, but you would absolutely have a messy perimeter with the anti-aliasing not being considered. So what do? Duplicate. Okay. Desaturate once again. Now we have to make a decision. Do we want full solid color when we refill these selections? Well, probably. So I'm going to open up my Command or Control L, and I'm going to make the darkest color into that gray. It's pretty crappy. And if we choose the white color here, all right, there we go. Now we've maximized the black and white of the image. Look again. Very crappy, high compression version of the logo. It's unlikely that you'll have a crappy version of the YouTube logo if you look hard enough, and definitely not likely that you'll have a crappy logo if for some reason YouTube is your client. So how do we work with this one? Okay, so once again, we invert it. Now we need to create the extraction, and then we can use that extraction to create different selections so we can color it differently, okay? Now, in this case, the black arrow here on the play button is going to be transparent in our result, but that's easy to fix. Let me show you what I mean. So we're going to do Alt Control 2 or Option Command 2 or Alt Control 2. There's a selection. Make a new layer. I'm going to go ahead and turn it all off. And just for fun, I'm going to fill it with black. All this does is gives me a perfect extraction without worrying about a selection perimeter or anything like that, floating now on a blank layer. That's exactly what we want. So how do we change it now? Okay, a couple of things that we can do. We can once again hold down Command or Control and click the layer itself. That's the selection. Okay, hold up a second. There we go. Now it's selected. Okay, a couple of things. We have the marquee tool. I can hold down this is a simple deselect, so it's easy. While I have the marquee tool, which is our little, what we used to call the capture box 1,000 years ago, hold down Alt or Option, and I can remove the button, and now I just have the YouTube logo. Make a new layer. Let's fill it with black. So we got it. And now we'll call this one YouTube text. There we go. Come back to our file down here. We can hold down Command or Control and click. Hold down Option or Alt, deselect the YouTube. There we go. Now we just have the button. Make a new layer. And at this point, we can fill it with a color, or we can fill it with black or white. And then we can do a clip down of a solid color if we're not sure. But, it needs to be pure red. So let's just make it pure red. Pretty straightforward. Boom. There it is, pure red. We're going to call that YouTube button. Okay. Now, there's still the perimeter there because we have it underneath. Turn it off. There we go. Now, we have preserved the best we can on a very compressed, crappy line art. It's not line art, but it's a raster-based version of a line art graphic. We've preserved it as best as possible. Okay. So a couple things we could do. If you wanted to make the YouTube triangle button white underneath, we make a layer underneath. This is the simplest thing you could do. Use your marquee, capture like that. Option or Alt Delete, fill it with white. Now you have this white square behind it. Take the two layers, compress them together. Now that has a white triangle, right? If you're really committed to this, hold down, select both layers, the text and the button, and Command or Control E, and now they're together. Okay, cool. So now we've taken this logo, which was embedded, if you will, on white. We didn't do any horrible selecting with the selection tools, the magic wand or anything like that. And now we have this logo, allowing us to drag it over to another element, just like that. There we go. We can turn off the, there we go. And now we have a YouTube logo that's perfectly seamless and easy to use. Also, another thing too, black and white, especially on most modern logos, which are very simple. I can again take my marquee tool around the word YouTube, Command and Control I, now it's white, and I have this graphic. So every now and then, whether it's your own signature that you signed on a piece of paper and took a photo of or scanned it, or any other graphic that you need to sort of embed over, if you don't have, or overlay, I should say, if you don't have, vector-based graphic and the knowledge to work with that, and you want to do it as seamless as possible. Remember, selections are bad. We don't want to use magic wand tool. Selections are good only if it's direct straight line art and you're really, really good with your Bezier curves and your pen tool. That could be good. But if you have a graphic like this, you simply want to take a YouTube logo and you can't find one that's transparent, you can do that pretty well. And like I showed you earlier, we also managed to do it with the Boris Effects logo, optics logo, and there's a million other things we can do. I know that was a lot, but we did get some requests saying, hey, yeah, show me some graphic design type things for photographers. And again, this is a great way that would work, like I said, with a signature. In fact, let's show you. Now, in this case, because of this signature, this is a very low quality version of the signature file I created a few years ago for myself. And it's low quality intentionally because I want to show you worst case scenario. Now, in this case, because it's black and white, if you wanted to use it exactly like it is. A blend mode will solve your problem. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's say I took this low quality and I came over here to my sample file. There it is, right? So we could just change blend modes. And as you can see, even on multiply, because it's black and white, I already have it there and it looks great. But if you want literal pixels, you don't want to have any calculations going on, then the same exact thing applies here. So I'm going to duplicate, I'm going to invert it. I'm going to make sure that I have maximum black and white, just going to sort of low key minimize, hopefully minimize some of that data compression. Okay, something like that. Option Command or Alt Control 2, get the selection, create a new layer. I'm going to go ahead and fill it with white, just to fill it with white. And now I can drag it over and I have my signature completely extracted, allowing me to do anything directly with the pixels, not worrying about a calculation. Because if I put it on multiply and then I try to colorize it, I could have some challenges with it. Whereas here, again, I could take a color. Let's just go for red and clip it down. See, even with a crappy, low quality version of my own signature, you can still extract it. It could be a phone snap of something that you signed with a marker on a sheet of paper. It does not matter. The same method applies. There are lots of variations here, and some logos are more complicated than others. Depends on what you're trying to preserve or not. Like we did on YouTube, we want to make our triangle button white, but we want to make the rest of the button red and the text black. And anyway, there's all kinds of discussions we can have in the graphic design space, but every now and then a photographer needs to extract a logo or a signature, something very custom because, hey, I don't have a transparent version and a blend mode isn't ideal. And this is just one way. I did this for many years, thousands of logos, can't even tell you. When you don't have the master file available, this will work. Questions, leave a comment below.